Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we got another great episode for you today. Today, we actually connect with John Stallone. If you don't know him, he wears a lot of hats, but in my opinion, the thing that he's doing that's the coolest is he is one of the founders of Howl for Wildlife. If you aren't paying attention to Howl for Wildlife, please do log in. Links to everything are in the show notes, but they're basically keeping hunters ahead of the curve when it comes to political issues. An example would be Colorado with the wolves or the mountain lions, or actually most recently the what is it, SB 25-1258 or whatever it was. I use them personally to make sure that I'm monitoring all the political comings and goings of hunting, and you guys should too. But beyond that, John's a great guy. He's a guide, he's a business owner, a hunter, and he has some great stories for us today. I got a lot of feedback about we need more whitetail stories, and John helps us out with just exactly that. So I'll stop there. Let's kick this thing off. Let's let John tell you some of his stories. But thank you guys for tuning in, and enjoy another great episode. All right, John, welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, brother. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to talk to you. I've heard a lot about you. This is actually the first time we've met, but we do have a mutual friend. We've both been out hunting with the Billy Goat Jermaine Hodge. You the year before me. That guy's got a lot of energy, tough to keep up with, but he had nothing but good things to say about you, man. So I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, Jermaine's an awesome guy. Love the guy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
He's fueled by Mountain Dew and candy.
right.
Bounces off the walls all the time.
Dude, he's got so much energy. I remember. I mean, I'm a bigger guy. I struggled to keep up with him, but fortunately, I was just like, if I can stay in between him and Pat, then I don't feel like I'm slowing anybody down here. And so I managed to just barely keep pace. So, but I was happy with it. But let's do this, John. Why don't you introduce yourself so the folks know who they're hearing some hunting stories from today?
Sure. Yeah. John Stallone. I wear many hats, actually. I'm the vice president of Howl for Wildlife. I've been a writer. I've gotten several books out there. I've written articles, for the last 25 years. I've been in some way, shape, or form, been in the industry, getting professionally, getting paid.
Yeah.
Since 2001. So when I started with Matthews on their pro staff, and then, developed into other things. I had a TV show. I own the hunting channel online. I started and pioneered online TV.
Mm-hmm.
Guide. Been a guide for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm
Father.
Of course, yeah. I'm familiar with a lot of that. What I will say is what you guys are doing at Howl specifically, that's probably what I'm most familiar with, is amazing. To all my listeners, you guys have to sign up for Howl. When there are political issues, you guys make it so easy. Literally, you just find your state, all the political issues, click a button, and we're sending custom messages to every person that we need to let them know that we have a problem with, whatever the issue may be. It's wolves in Colorado, or it's mountain lion bans for me. I've used your site regularly, man. So thank you for making that so easy. I think it makes a big difference. I know that the crazies that are trying to stop hunting, they're using AI bots, but really it's just you guys helping hunters do it themselves. And it's awesome. Right. So thank you for doing that, man. It's really cool. It's fun to see the other side panicking because we're finally getting ourselves together. And I think Howl's a big part of that.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. And you said one thing that I kind of want to hit. You said, find your state. I think that it's important that we recognize that it doesn't matter whether you're an alligator hunter in Florida or a bear hunter in Washington, that you should get involved in all issues.
That's a good point.
Because we are all in this together. We're all interconnected, and I'm not going to take a bunch of time up on this podcast to explain that to you, but hear me when I say it. When you lose a portion of hunting, any type of hunting, any method, anywhere, it eventually will trickle down to you and what you love.
Yeah.
So it's important that you stand up for every and all hunting, whether it's something you partake in or not.
I agree, and you're right. It is about more than just where you live. And I've actually filled out probably 3 to 4 different states issues and sent stuff out. So good catch. Sorry for that, but you are 100% correct.
It was actually perfect.
Yeah. well, cool. Well, yeah, but like I said, I don't normally do this kind of stuff. Normally, we just tell hunting stories, but I do think what you guys are doing is important. So, my listeners, there's a couple thousand of you. Get out there and check out Howl for Wildlife. It's really important.
Please enjoy and become a member.
Absolutely.
It's super important. It helps us keep the lights on too. We do a lot of work.
Yes. I'll also say that, like, I got on there and there were all sorts of things going on that I had no idea about. That doesn't get the big, the big noteworthy stuff, like the mountain lion ban in Colorado. There's all sorts of issues that people aren't aware of. So just a good way to keep yourself educated, as well as to make sure that your legislature, the people that are representing you, know that we care about that stuff. So, but that's not why we're here, John. I mean, it's important. It's really important. But we're here to hear your hunting stories, man. So what do you got for us? Why don't you set the stage?
Well, so when you asked me to be on, I kind of thought about this. Obviously, I got a bunch of hunting stories.
Yeah.
And I've been primarily a Western hunter since the early 90s. But my passion or my roots for hunting started whitetail hunting. So I was thinking about a story, and it's a story about this buck I called Swamp Donkey. And it was kind of a
great name.
Yeah, it was a 4-year saga. So that's why I was like, this is a good story to tell. And hopefully I can remember all the details now, because it's probably been 10 years now since I killed him. But and then it started 4 years before that. So, a little backstory. So if you haven't heard it from my voice or my accent, rather, I was originally born in New York. I moved to Arizona in 1991, and I would go back and forth. Every year we'd go for a couple of days, whatever. We'd go back hunting in New York, and then I like, as a kid, I say kid, as a teenager, whatever, I would spend my summers there. I'd go hunting, on Long Island when I started bow hunting.
Yeah.
And then I got married 17 years ago, and my wife and her family are from Eastern Long Island. They're from, like, the Hamptons, basically, like that area, Riverhead.
Did you meet her in New York before you moved to Arizona, or did you meet her in Arizona?
No, I met her here.
Okay.
And the crazy thing about that was, I met her through hunting as well. Well, through hunting, and my other business is pool business. I build and remodel and service commercial swimming pools. Her dad was my shotcrete guy. He used to do the concrete from the shells of the pools, and he was a hunter.
Okay.
And him and I became very good friends. Matter of fact, I used to go on double dates with him and his wife, with my ex-girlfriend, before I married his daughter.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, but we would go on all these crazy trips. We'd, go all over the country together.
Yeah.
And so that's how I met my wife.
Okay. Hey, hunters. Have you ever had one of those stories, the ones that you didn't want to tell, the ones that end in failure? Yeah, I've been there. Actually, you know what? The culprit for me usually is bad optics, or worse, lack of using my optics at all. Picture this. I spot a trophy buck, or an antelope, or an elk, whatever it may be. My heart is racing, but the blurry view, or I just can't quite identify exactly what I'm looking at, it has me second guessing. Well, that's where Vortex Optics comes in. With crystal clear glass and rugged durability, Vortex gives you the confidence to take the shot. Don't let poor optics ruin your story. Make every moment count. Upgrade to Vortex and turn your hunting tales into triumphs. Visit vortexoptics.com today. Through him, I assume, did he set you up, or were you just around each other enough that eventually you were like, hey?
Her and I had been friends for like 4 or 5 years prior, because I worked with her. Like, when I called the office, that's who I spoke to. I spoke to her.
Gotcha.
But but yes, he actually ended up setting us up.
Okay.
Like he kind of set the stage when my previous relationship fizzled out. So
He was ready. He was ready and waiting. Okay.
Him and his wife were him and my mother-in-law, Georgia. They were always kind of scheming to get us together. So
they're like, let's get this guy in the family. We need him in the family. That's a cool story. But keep going. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So, it was like 2012, and like I said, my wife and my kids and I, we'd go back east to go visit her family, and a lot of times we go there for like Halloween or fall break or whatever the case may be. And so we went out, and every time we'd go, I'd go hunting. I became really close friends with her cousin Mike, which I call my cousin Mike, and I'll probably refer to him as my cousin Mike during this story. Okay. I got him into bow hunting. He was a rifle hunter before that. Went upstate once in a while, but I got him into bow hunting. Anyway, so it's 2012. It's October. It was my first sit of that season. And, I had gotten ready, as you do, several hours before daylight, got myself out there to go sit in the stand. And so Long Island is like, it's kind of crazy. You sit in these like smaller woodlots, it'll be like 15 acres, 20 acres, 5 acres, whatever. And they'll be in between houses. And that's the public land hunting.
Yeah.
There is private land hunting too, but the public land hunting, most of the private stuff, it's like you just need to gain access to public land through private land.
Okay.
So, I had been hunting. So to set the stage to kind of get an idea, I had been hunting this like 15-acre woodlot that was like bordered on the east and on the west by swamps and houses to the south. And on the north side, there was like an old junkyard. And that old junkyard was abandoned and nobody lived there, and it wasn't operating anymore. But it had like a 5-acre field. It was just like an overgrown feral field where cars and stuff used to be parked, but there wasn't anything there anymore. And that was like the jewel of my honey hole, this little 5-acre woodlot 5-acre field, because the deer would go there. They would do what deer do, and at nighttime, eating whatever in that field, and then after daylight, they would come back into the woods that was in between the swamps, and some of them would actually even go into the swamp.
Okay.
So what that would allow me to do is I would be able to slip into my stand. I would never bump any deer, would never run into anything. I would slip into my stand in the morning, at first light, or before first light rather, and climb up in my stand, get ready, and then let the woods settle around me. And then like 8 o'clock in the morning, like an hour after the light, all these deer would start coming back through into the woods, start filtering through. So I had set my stand up in this tree. And I called it the Discovery Tree after this happened, but it was this big oak tree. It was on where 2 or 3 trails, I can't remember if it was 3, I think it was 2 for sure, trails converged. And like if you look down the trail, you can literally see rubs and scrapes the whole way.
Oh, that's cool.
You could, just buck sign everywhere. And it was this giant oak tree and had like a V at the top, where, the 2 main trunks split off. So I set my stand way up there, tall enough that I could look through I was high enough that I could look through the V with my, when I turned around and looked through it, but not tall enough not high enough rather, to shoot through it. But anyway, so I set it up, and then, the morning went as it usually did in there. Little bucks and does and fawns were all filtering past me. And then, I don't know, it was probably 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it just stopped. There was nothing, So I was just sitting there, kind of bored, whatever, but hoping, as you do when you're tree stand hunting, just hoping stuff was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, I was starting to get really hungry, and I was like, man, I think I might just get out of the stand early. And it was like 10:30-ish,
Okay.
maybe closer to 11. It was pretty early, it was pretty late in the morning, but I usually would stick it out till about 12:30. And I started hearing like this sound behind me, like something coming through the leaves. And I'm like, oh shit, I think that might be a deer. And I'm listening, and I'm like, oh yeah, it is. So I stood up slow, and it was coming straight behind me. So I had this big oak tree like covering me up. You couldn't see unless I was standing and looking through that V that I was talking about.
Okay.
So I peer over that V, and here comes a buck. He's like 125, 130-inch buck. And in New York, the mantra over there is brown is down. So
Okay.
when you see a 125, 130 buck, you see a poking young buck, you're like, well, this is a shooter. This is a great.
Yeah. No
This
questions asked.
Right? Exactly. So I can see him when he's working this rub line, and he's working his way towards me. And he's already in bow range. He's been in bow range, And me being a Western hunter, at that time, especially back then, I would shoot really far. But he was probably 30 yards from me at this point. And he kept walking, and he stops again, and he's like 10 yards behind my tree now. And he's working this like scrape, and he, kicks his head up to chew on a branch. And as he's chewing on this branch, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like leaning up against the tree. I'm just kind of looking at him with one eye, and I got like tension on the bow already waiting for him. He just got to come 15 yards just past the tree, and he's done. 15 yards, and he's going to be 5 yards past the tree. Well, about the time that he's chewing on this branch, a squirrel jumps from the tree that he's on, chewing on to the limb that I'm leaning up against. And like he looked at the squirrel, and the squirrel was right there, right by me, like feet from my face, right?
Yeah.
So he just sat there, and he stared, and he stared, and he stared, and he stared.
The squirrel sat down, or the deer sat down?
The deer didn't sit down. He just kind of stood there.
Okay.
He was looking, and he was looking. I felt like he was like looking through me, and all he could see is like this, from my neck up, basically. But and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to look at him. I'm just kind of like looking at him out of the corner of my eye, and he's just staring and staring, and it felt like an eternity. I don't know, it was probably only a minute or two, and then he just turned around, wagged his tail, and he walked back up the trail that he came down. And I was like, son of a bitch. Like, I was just so pissed. I was like, I can't believe this just happened. And I was going to kill that squirrel. I was like, I'm going to shoot the damn squirrel. But then I was like, you know what? I made a pact with myself at that point that I wasn't going to kill or anything, that didn't have purpose, that I wasn't going to eat or wasn't doing management or something.
Not out of anger.
Exactly. So I let the squirrel go. Anyway, so I started thinking about it, and I'm like, man, although this was only my first sit, I only had like 2 days to hunt. So I called my wife. I said, babe, we need to change our tickets. We were on Southwest. I'm like, we need to change it. Our kids weren't in school yet. This was young. They were still young.
Yeah.
Actually, with my oldest was in school, but at the time I only had 2. I have 3 now. And I was like, okay, change the tickets. Let's extend it like three more days, because I found the giant buck. Long Island giant buck, and I'm going to hunt him. Well, I knew I couldn't stay in that tree. I knew I had to kind of like move up that trail that he came down. In my head, I was like, if I need to move up that trail, because if he comes back down here, first thing he's going to do is going to look up in that tree. He's going to check. If he comes down this trail again, he's going to check that tree. And if he sees me or any outline of me, he's going to not come. So I started looking for another set, and I followed this trail that he came down, which I didn't really like. now I know a little bit more about it. Like it was like a straight up buck trail, just a real faint trail, but it had rubs on it. And I
Okay.
followed it all the way back. Probably, I say all the way back, it was like 100 yards, right? And it dropped off into this little bottom, and there was a beech tree right at the edge, which later on we nicknamed the killing tree. It's still a tree stand tree stand spot that I use a lot, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So down there was like converging trails, rubs and scrapes, and it was just like, and I can see distinct trails coming out of the swamp because it was right on the edge of the swamp. I was like, oh, this is great. So I set the stand up really high and went up like 25, maybe even 30 feet. And I set it in a way that I wouldn't have to stand, that I could sit shooting the whole time, minimize any amount of movement. Well, anyway, so I hunted the next few days. I was letting lesser bucks go by, and does and whatnot. And I even had turkey walk through. And then the last day that I had to hunt, a nor'easter came. And a nor'easter, if anybody knows what that is, it's kind of like a monsoon on the East Coast, right?
Okay.
That's what it's called. They're called nor'easters. It's a crazy, rainy windstorm. Well, we weren't getting any of the rains, but we were getting the winds bad. And everybody's like, you're freaking crazy. You're going to go sit in that tree and the winds. It was so windy by the end of the day. Actually, the next day, I felt like I had did the most amazing ab workout I have ever done in my life. Because I was just like swaying back and forth like this the whole time. Just
I believe it, man.
Just dumb young guy shit.
Yeah, it's funny.
And I really wasn't that young. I was in my 30s. You know?
I've been out hunting a bunch, and like cold doesn't get me, heat doesn't get me. The wind is the one thing that like gets me and puts me down. I probably couldn't have done it. Even I couldn't have done it, man. That's impressive, and I believe how
you would hate working in South Dakota then. Oh my God. Okay. It literally blows 25 miles an hour every day.
Yeah.
All day. Anyway, so I sat there. Literally, I had it in my head. I said, I'm going to sit from sunup to sundown. And I sat the whole day, and I didn't see anything. Now, I got about 15 minutes left of light. And all of a sudden, the wind kind of sort of calmed down. Like I say, calmed down. It went from 25 mile an hour gust to like 10 mile an hour gust. Calmed down a little bit. And all of a sudden, I see this doe. And she's acting like she's being chased by a buck. But I'm like, man, it's early. I don't know. It's late October, but
okay.
It's typically the rut doesn't happen there till like second week of November. And anyway, so I see her acting like she's getting chased, and I'm thinking, oh shit, she's got a buck behind her. And I started like pleading, and I don't know if you ever tree stand hunted or not, but you're like, oh, please come my way, please come my way. I'm just like, oh yeah. And I can see emerging out of the brush a big 8-point with a sticker on it. I didn't mention that when I would describe him. So he was an 8-point with a sticker off one side, okay, on his G2. And so I'm like, man, that's him. It's got to be him. It was kind of getting dark, and it was, I had like 5 or 6 minutes left of shooting light. Let's put it that way. Yeah. I hit the bleak call twice. I'm like, I got to call this doe over. Like, bleat twice, and here they come. Oh my God, they're coming right at me. And I draw back, and I'm like swaying back and forth, and I'm like, and I knew it was going to be a short, close shot, like under 10 yards. So he steps out, and as soon as he stepped out, I like mustered up all the strength I possibly can to steady myself, and I shot him. Perfect shot. Runs off. I can hear him crash. Immediately get on the phone with Mike. I'm like, Mike, you gotta come over here and help me. We're gonna go track this thing, and I'm gonna need your help to drag him out. Mike gets there, so fast work. Just find him. We don't even have to track him. Just super easy to track. And I find him, and I get there, and I'm like, oh shit, this isn't the same buck. I had shot like a 115-ish buck.
So a good buck, but that's crazy that another buck was there. Did you not know that there was a second buck, or just
no? Well, here's the thing, and I started to second guess myself. I was like, man, maybe I was imagining how big he was, adding inches or whatever. But I'm like, it's the wrong buck, man. That's not the buck. That's not Swamp Donkey. That's not the buck that I was targeting. He's a good buck. I was happy with him, but I'm like, this is either his brother. I said, I can tell you for sure that other buck was at least 3.5 years old. This buck is a 2.5-year-old buck.
Okay.
He would have been a stud. Like if I would have known and let him grow, he probably would have been a stud.
Okay.
But drag him out. Anyway, so now I'm like, man, I was beside myself, So I returned back to Arizona, and I started poring over topo maps and Google Earth, and I spent countless hours, talking to Mike, because Mike he lived there and he was continuing to hunt those stands. So, and he went pretty much the whole rest of the season and never saw this Swamp Donkey that I was talking about, and I was like, man, I must have just grew inches on this thing's head, right? It must have been the same one. And I think it was like the last day that Mike was able to go hunt. He was playing around on his phone, and he caught movement, and he turned to look at it, and he's like, oh shit, that's Swamp Donkey. You could see the bigger frame.
Yeah.
You could see the big cheater, or the big sticker rather. And I get a text from him. Swamp Donkey lives. So I felt like vindicated. I was like, oh man, Yeah. I was like, you didn't even have to kill him at that point. I was like, yes, somebody else saw him. I'm not making shit up, So anyway, fast forward to the next season. When about the same time, I brought a camera with me, and we never set up cameras in New York because they get stolen. Doesn't matter if they get vandalized. Doesn't matter if you put them in a bear box or whatever. But I was like, I needed more intel.
Yeah.
All right. So I hung a stand. Excuse me. Hung the camera, and whatever. I end up again just hunting. Got to the last day, and I ended up shooting like 120-inch, 3.5-year-old buck. Wasn't Swamp Donkey, but I shot him on the last night. The second to last night I shot him.
Okay.
I was just, forget about it. I'm not going to see Swamp Donkey, and I have a hard time not filling tags. So, I shoot him, but I hit him a little far back, and it's a nighttime, and he goes running off, and I didn't want to get up and go push him because, like I explained, you're in smaller woodlots. He can end up in somebody's backyard. We don't play that game. So let him sit overnight, and there's no coyotes there.
Okay.
So there's foxes, but there's no coyotes. So there's no worry about him like getting found by a coyote and getting eaten or whatever. So I let him lay. And I got up later the next morning as I didn't want to go in there traipsing around when deer were up and moving. I got on the blood trail. I start following him, and I follow him right out of my woodlot across that field that I was talking about, and he crossed the road, and he went into this other lot of woods that's actually bigger than the one that I was hunting, and has more swamp. Okay.
Are you ready to elevate your archery game? Summit Bowstrings delivers premium strings for all archers, crafted with bloodline fiber and BCY material stretched for unmatched consistency. Choose from 3 series: Hunter, Competition, and Summit. Each string is built bison tough with unique techniques for extreme durability and performance. Ideal for both seasoned hunters and target archers. Experienced strings designed to handle any challenge. Visit summitbowstrings.com and use HSP10 for a 10% discount.
So in order for me to get in there, I got permission from this little lady that lived across the street. I said, can I cross your yard to access the wood behind your house? She said, go ahead, no problem. So I tracking them. And I'm starting to feel like something's watching me. And I'm like, man, this is creepy. Like I felt like someone was watching me. And I kind of like, I'm like looking down intently for the blood. And I look up. And 40 yards down the trail. And I, like a stupid moron, I didn't bring my bow. But I look up, and there he is. He's standing there. And he's standing over my dead buck.
No way.
Shit me not. Standing over the dead buck. And I'm like, is this, am I imagining this? Is this like real? Is this really happening right now?
Yeah.
You know?
Let me ask a question about New York. So if you buy a license, how many tags do you get?
2 buck tags and 2 doe tags.
Okay, so yeah, you should have had your bow with you. Okay, that's crazy. He's just standing over the buck that you shot, and this is the second year you've been chasing swamp donkey.
Correct.
Okay.
So, anyway, I go over there, and I kind of he never runs. He just kind of like walks off, and I watched where he went into the swamp. And I went and kind of like did an investigation, and I started putting some more pieces of the puzzle together. I'm like, holy shit, I think this son of a bitch lives here. I think he lives on this side, and he lives in this swamp right here. This is where he beds. This is where he resides. There was this big like oak flat, right where my deer had died, and this big oak flat was bordered on houses on one side and the swamp on the other. And I think that's what they were doing, right? So I started looking at this a little bit harder, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to hunt this. So I got permission. I got my buck out. I got permission from the lady. She's like, yeah, anytime you want. I would give her meat.
Yeah,
for years. Anyway, but the next year I passed. I was unable to go.
Okay.
It was 2015. I was unable to go because I drew an ibex tag in New Mexico.
No, yeah, that trumps whitetail in Long Island.
Yeah,
I think.
Exactly. Right. So I didn't go, but Mike, we picked a tree out in this oak flat, and this tree, like it's kind of a, I don't even, it's kind of a weird, we call it the tree fort.
Okay.
And there was actually a fort there, and it was kind of like dilapidated, whatever, and it like led right into these 2 trails that came out of the swamp. So he sat there for for that whole season, never saw swamp donkey. But I had this hypothesis in my head about the loop. And remember how I was saying, I was allowed to, the way the deer were using the other side, I could slip in there in the morning. Well, this was the opposite.
Got it.
This side, the deer were all right there in that oak flat in the morning, and would go back into the swamp to go bed, for the day. So this was like a late morning, like you wouldn't want to get in there until like 11 a.m. ish, and then the evening they would come out back there. Well, Mike didn't know that.
Got it. Okay.
I don't think I voiced that to him, and I probably should have, but I figured this out, over the next day or two.
Gotcha. Was he seeing deer and just not swamp donkey, or was he just not seeing anything?
He would see some does and stuff.
Okay.
But the does, would be like, he would bump deer every time he'd go in. So he never know what the heck he was bumping.
Got it.
Anyway, so I missed that year. I ended up getting an ibex. It was awesome. And then it's crazy. So in 2016, the very next year, I drew an ibex tag again, back-to-back years. But I was going to Long Island later because Maria's other cousin, Mike's older brother, was getting married in November.
Okay.
And we usually go in October, so we were going in November. So it was actually an opportunity for me to, one, hunt the rut, which I hadn't hunted in New York for a while, and two, I could do both hunts. Well, I didn't score. I didn't fill my tag on 2016. I had a lot of great opportunities and fill my tag in 2016 on Ibex. And I knew for some reason, I'm like, man, I used to have this feeling when I didn't get something that I thought I was going to make happen, I always knew the next thing or whatever tag I had next was going to be the one.
Yeah.
So
positive reinforcement.
I just kind of like knew. I just kind of knew that I was gonna catch up with Swamp Donkey. So the first morning, I go sit in the original stand, the killing tree. I go sit there in the morning, and then that around 10:30, I get down and I cross the street, and I go climb up in the tree fort. I was gonna go climb up in the tree fort. And as I'm going to get in the tree fort, I started looking and I see this rub that is like obscured from everything else, and it's like down the trail. And I'm like, oh, this is one of those little buck trails that I was talking about. And the more I went down it, the more rubs I saw, and it was like an elk had walked through there and made rubs because it was just like big saplings bent over, broken, and just twisted up. I was like, this is a big deer. I didn't know if it was Swamp Donkey, but I knew it was a big deer. It wasn't a 120-inch, 115-inch deer, right? So I'm like, I need to move my stand here. I could actually see the exit or entrance to where the tree fort was. It was still like 30 yards. I could still kind of shoot to it. So if something came out there, it was just like a better position all the way around. It kind of covered the whole oak flat, covered all the main trails coming out. And I was like, this is the spot. So I moved the stand. Okay. And then I moved the stand. I was like, I made a bunch of commotion. I'm going to back out. I didn't hunt that afternoon. And, I returned the next morning, and I didn't even go sit in the killing tree. I waited to about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I went straight to the new tree stand. Okay, so in the new tree stand, I get up there, and I think it was like 11:30, and then by 1 o'clock, I hear some noises behind me, and I'm like, oh shit. So kind of like same scenarios the first time, coming straight from behind me, and I kind of peer up around the tree, and that's Swamp Donkey, and he's coming down the trail, and he's got like a limp, and he doesn't look as big as the last time. So I'm kind of leaving some of the stuff out of the story. It was actually I think I might have maybe missed a whole year in there actually, but
okay.
Yeah, because I shot 2 bucks. I shot 2 bucks in 2 days. I actually put a film out about it. It's called 2 bucks 2 days. Somewhere in between there.
Okay.
And so anyway, this is actually this stand. I already had hunted it 1 year prior, so I didn't miss a year. I shot the 2 bucks out of this stand. Anyway, that's either here nor there. So I'm like, I had seen Swamp Donkey that year, but I saw him from a distance, and I snapped a picture of him with my phone, zoomed in all the way, and you can see he's probably, at the time, he was probably pushing 170, just big whitetail, and he had double stickers at that point. Anyway, so I see him coming down the trail, and he's got a limp, and I could tell he's got this scar, and I just kind of guess maybe he got hit by a car or something. And he's not as big as he was. He's probably 160-ish maybe now.
Still a great deer though. Yeah.
Still a huge deer especially for Long Island. And so he's coming down, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get this guy. And I turn on my camera and I flip it to right where I'm like, he's gonna go to this scrape. I know he's gonna go to this scrape. I flip it to that scrape. Sure as shit, he keeps going, and he stops. He stops, and he stops in a spot where I can't shoot him. He's within range, but I can't shoot him. And I'm having flashbacks to the first day, and I'm like, oh my God, he's not gonna come. He's not gonna give me the opportunity again. And then I don't know. I have to say at least 5 or 6 minutes came by, and he was just kind of like scanning, looking. Never was looking up at me though, so that's why I was like kind of still feeling good about it.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden he starts walking again, flicks his tail, and he starts walking again. And I'm like, he's going to that scrape. Hit record. He steps out. I draw back. I didn't stand up, nothing, just sitting down, waiting. He comes, and I got this like shooting lane between these two saplings, and he's going underneath a beech tree. And I don't know if you know what beech trees look like, but beech trees, they're kind of almost evergreen. They have leaves most of the year.
Okay.
So it's quite a bit to kind of like to maneuver an arrow through there. So second he gets to that scrape, I didn't even wait. Like the second he got there, I touched it off, hit him, perfect shot, kicks his back heel, and he runs into the swamp right down that trail that the tree fort was in. And man, I was beside myself. Just like, oh my God, I just shot swamp donkey. You know, I just shot swamp donkey. Like I had to keep like reassuring myself that it actually happened. So I get down, I walk, and literally he died like right underneath the tree fort stand. That was the rest was history, I guess.
That's amazing. That's cool. Yeah. I really love those whitetail stories where people like play chess for years with these deer. Like I've never had that experience, but it's so cool to hear these stories because a lot of guys get out there and do that. And so it's awesome that you did it. Not only that, but you got a hold of him. And so you think when you actually got close to him that it was a car that hit him and not like gored by another deer?
I don't think so. It was a big, big scar. It didn't have any point type deals.
Gotcha. Kind of got hit and like road rash off of the bounce or something like that.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
Crazy. That's crazy. But still, so what did he find? Have you scored him?
I never officially scored him.
Okay.
I'll send you a picture.
Okay. Awesome. I want to see that.
Yeah, but
what did Uncle Mike say? Or not Uncle Mike, Cousin Mike. What did he say when you finally got him?
Oh yeah, he came and helped me out, man. We were high-fiving and over time, so we made friends with one of the guys across the street who was a chiropractor of all things, and had him in on it too. It was just like a cool thing. So over the years, me, Mike's friend Mike, this other guy, Brian, who's the chiropractor, we all became, we'd all share intel and figure out what's going on. And there's been other bucks. There's been some other target bucks too that we've over the years gone after and had some success with. But Swamp Donkey is still
number one,
the original.
That's cool.
Original one.
Still hunting that same little spot? Yes, that's awesome.
I do. Yeah. But previous to that, I had another spot that we would hunt, and I did very well there. There was a lot of deer. Just it was just a lot more dealing with homeowners and whatnot. It wasn't as there's a lot of interconnectedness. So the deer kind of had to funnel past you and stuff. You can pretty much set up on a tree stand anywhere on a trail, and you were going to have deer pass you at some point.
Gotcha.
It wasn't. You didn't have to think about it as much, or maybe had I thought about it a lot more, maybe I would have been able to score a bigger buck there. But
gotcha. When a whitetail has the choice, it's on the land there, it gets shot, and its choice are swamp or a home. Typically, do they dive towards the swamp away from houses, or is it kind of just a crapshoot, whatever direction they're facing?
I'd say most of the time they go to swamp.
Okay.
Yeah, most of the time they want to go towards where they feel safe.
Yeah.
They don't know that they got shot.
Yeah.
They just know that there's something happened and they need to avoid danger.
Imagine this. You're deep in the wilderness. The sun is rising, casting golden light over rugged terrain. Your heart races as you navigate through the backcountry, knowing the perfect shot could come at any moment. This is where memories are made and stories are born. Ultralight rifles are often seen as Mountain West guns, but the Ridgeline FFT from Christensen Arms breaks that mold. This stellar, lightweight rifle is your perfect companion, whether you're in the backcountry or box blind, ensuring you never have to switch between your builds. With its aero-grade carbon fiber barrel and stock, the Ridgeline FFT is incredibly lightweight, yet powerful. Thanks to its innovative side baffle brake, it reduces recoil even on a 5-pound gun shooting magnum calibers. It's like black magic. As a sub-MOA tack driver made in America, the Ridgeline FFT is for those who seek the thrill of the hunt and the joy of storytelling. Picture yourself returning to camp, Ridgeline FFT in hand, ready to share the day's adventures. Head to your local shop, pick one up. You've got to feel this rifle to believe it. Let the Ridgeline FFT be part of your hunting stories and the legacy you pass down. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense, man. Well, that's a great story. I loved it. I like I told you, I've had lots of people asking for more whitetail stories, and I think that was perfect. So thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Do you have any other ones that come to the top of mind you want to share? Otherwise, we can wrap this thing up. It's kind of up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I got kind of a similar saga story. It won't be as long-winded, and it only really, I think it only really takes place over 2 years, at least 2 years in my mind that stand out.
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, I shot a nice mule deer buck here in Arizona.
Okay.
And I had nicknamed him Megatron.
Good
and
name.
The reason why, he's just gnarly, man. Just at
not
the time,
typical.
I didn't think he was actually going to be a super high scoring buck, but I guess it turns out he is. But he's got 2 inline points, one that comes out the front and one that comes out the back on the opposite. So they're like opposite of each other. So he's
Interesting.
essentially a 5x5 mule deer with eye guards. So I guess in the Eastern terminology, he's a 6x6. He's a 12-pointer.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so I had hunted for this buck. I was actually stalking another buck. I was with my cousin Anthony, and I was stalking another buck, and he was trying to talk me in. So in Arizona, we use radios during the archery season, especially because we hunt these big flats. We'll get up on, they're called flat. We call them flats, but they're really not flat. They're very broken up, undulating, rolling type. For mule deer, that's what we tend to look for. So we try to get up on high points real far away, and it's very easy to get lost going in. So you have a guy kind of point you in the right direction.
Got it.
So, excuse me. We see this buck that I had been chasing since the year before, and he's just this big, wide, typical 4-point, just good looking buck, man. I don't know what he would have scored, probably 160, 170-ish. He was a nice buck.
Yeah.
And I'm stalking this buck, and I'm making my way, and according to what the intel I'm getting from Anthony and what I remember where he was at before I left my sight picture, one of the things I do actually a lot of times I'll take a picture through my binoculars before I take off so I can get an understanding of positioning and whatever of the terrain and vegetation. And I could tell I'm getting fairly close to this other buck. And I don't know, something, I was just kind of like, the buck should have been to, if I'm looking at 12 o'clock, the buck that I was after should have been at like my 1 o'clock. For some reason, I turn and I look at 9 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, I see a white muzzle laying down 100 yards from me. And I'm like, that's a buck laying down right there. And I could just see the white tip, his nose, and maybe the first like 2-3 inches of the muzzle. But I know it's a buck because it's white, right? The bush he's laying up against is super thick. So I kind of like maneuver my way to kind of get a better look at him. And at this point, Anthony kind of loses visual on the buck that I'm after. And I'm like, I kind of radio back up to Anthony. I'm like, I got another buck over here. And he can't see it. Anthony can't see it, and he can't even see me because of the way I'm at and the way the terrain is. I'm like, I'm just going to go in. I know where he's at. I'm going to make this happen. Assuming that he's a good deer. I don't know if he's a good deer or not, but usually they don't have really white muscles until they get more mature.
Okay.
You know, the 4.5 and older, they start getting really white. So I kind of make my way and I look around and I'm like, oh, jeez, this is a good buck. And he's crazy looking. This was Megatron laying there. Anyway, so I could feel the wind not right. And I'm like, man, I got to back up. And I got to come at him from a different angle. So I back up and I make this long loop. And man, I feel like I was doing my best Puma impression I ever did in my life. I was just moving slow and just,
yeah.
I was like, because I was only like 115 yards from him. I was close, you know. Okay. I know a lot of guys that would have spun their sight up and just waited for him to stand, you know. But I don't shoot a slider, and nothing against people who do, but I have to limit myself to 80 yards or less. So I'm like, I got to get around, and I kind of moved, and I got around, and I got in the position, and I'm just not seeing this deer, and I'm like, man, where the hell is he? And I'm looking, and and man, nothing, and I'm just keep inching my way closer and getting a little bit better angle into where I know he was at. And all of a sudden, I see tips of antlers, and I'm like, whoa, how the hell did he get over there? He's coming at me. And then I'm like, oh man, that's another buck. It's a little 3-point buck. And he comes over the rise, and he goes right to the bushes where I saw Megatron laying down, and I'm just like, what is going on here? So I finally get over there, get a really good look into and there's no Megatron. That other little buck literally laying down in the same bed that Megatron was. And I'm like, so in my head, I'm like, how did this guy Houdini me? I really don't know.
And your buddy didn't see him bolt out of there or anything like that?
No, my cousin could not see him.
Okay.
This whole scenario, nobody could see but me.
Okay.
Just because it was down in a depression and there was no way he could see. Well, I surmised that Megatron must have saw this 3-point, got up and like ran him off, whatever, and then because me getting around, I made it sound like it was a short thing. You know, it took me like 45 minutes for now. So I'm just assuming he ran him off or he caught wind of a doe, whatever. Like I said, he was fairly close to the other buck that I was going after. The other buck I was going after was running around with does.
Okay.
So he might have just took off. I don't know. Well, Anthony catches a glimpse of the first buck that I was going after. I kind of make my way towards him. It falls apart. They didn't bust them, but they just kept moving, and I couldn't catch up with them. So the rest of December goes by, and I see bits and pieces of him here and there out in the flats, and I've tried to put stalks on him. I was by myself several times, so it didn't work out. Well, then I get COVID, and I don't hunt all of January. So January is usually the best time to hunt here in Arizona because it's the OTC tag. And I don't hunt at all. My buddy Dave actually spots him with Anthony a couple of times, and they chase him. They don't catch up with him. So fast forward the following year, Charles from Powerful Wildlife, the president, my great friend Charles, he comes out to come hunting with me. And before he gets there, it's like a couple days after Christmas, and I spot Megatron again. And I'm like, oh, he's alive. Okay, good. Nobody got him. I'm going to hunt him. Well, I don't see him. Charles shows up like January 3rd or something like that, and we head out. And my cousin Joe's with us now, and I got a lot of cousins. I'm Italian. So, Joe's with us, and we spot that one buck that I originally went after the year before, and we send Charles after him. Charles gets back up on the mountain. Oh, I'm sorry. Before that happens. Sorry, I'm like messing up the sequence of everything. So we spot up Megatron's right at the base of the mountain that I'm on, or the hill that I'm on. And he's with a bunch of does, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to go after this buck. Make my way down there. I get to like 88 yards or something, and the wind is just not doing well. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get busted. And a spike ends up busting me. They blow out and they run off. So I climb back up the hill, and then we spot this other buck. Well, Charles spots up this other buck. And so Charles goes after this buck. We're kind of like trying to help him out. My cousin Joe turns around and he looks and he sees Megatron out in the flats again.
Okay.
You know. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't know if you could do this, Joe, but if you can keep tabs on this guy for Charles and Megatron for me, let's make it happen, right? Well, I go after Megatron and I'm just like shadowing him. So Joe got me to a position where I can keep eyes on him. And I was just like 150 yards out. And every time they'd move, I'd like move from bush to bush. And I just kept cutting the distance a little bit by a little bit by a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So I'm not relying on him, and he's helped. I can hear him talking. I'm listening to him talking to Charles and trying to talk him into that, and I'm doing my thing. And then every once in a while, he'd come back and give me vital information that I need, like when I need to drop into into something to get more cover, whatever, and I would lose sight of him. Well, he talks me into. We get into this like it's like a cholla field, and cholla fields are real dense and they're not the greatest to stalk in because if you just brush up against stuff, you're gonna get cholla on you.
Yeah.
So we see the buck. He tells me the buck's out there. I can see the buck. I can't see the buck at this point, but I can see the doe, and she's I can see her ears at the tops of this cholla field, and I can see her walking, not necessarily in my direction, but walking out to a clearing. I say a clearing. It was like a 10-yard opening.
Okay.
Right. And I'm ranging her, and I'm like, oh my, she's going to come in at like 60. When she hits that opening, she's going to be like 60 yards. So I kind of got myself into this position, and sure as all hell, she comes out there and stops. She looks around, puts her head down, starts feeding, and I know he's going to stop right there where she stopped because that's what bucks do when they're rut, you know. If a doe stops, he's got to go smell, taste, whatever they do for the, when a doe stops. Down here he comes, and I can see the tips of the antlers, and I can see his head coming through, and he's coming right to that same spot. So I draw back. I ranged it like 30 times when the doe was there. He comes out, and he stops, but he doesn't come all the way. And all I got is this like neck shot. And I don't know what made him do it or not, but he kind of turned and like quartered to me. So it made it even worse of a neck shot. Like it was quartering to me.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, man, I think this is now or never.
Yeah. 60 yards, right?
Yeah, 60 yards. And I don't know what made me think that at that point. except for the fact, so I'm leaving this part of the story. Where we were hunting, it's not a secret spot. There's probably, and I know several of the other hunters there that hunt that area, and we communicate and, whatever, share intel. But there was probably 4 or 5 other guys hunting that buck. Maybe not at that minute, but I'm like, if I don't make this happen now, this buck's going to get killed in the next couple of days. And it was already to the point where I was like having to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to get out to the glassing spot that I wanted to glass from to see him.
Okay.
To beat other guys. That's how bad it was. So it was a high traffic area. But so he made that little turn and he's kind of quartering to me and he's not looking in my direction. He's not looking at me like alert, but he's kind of like looking in that direction.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right. So I shoot. I hit him right where I was aiming and he runs off and I'm kind of like freaking out now. I'm like, did I make a good shot? Was that the smart decision to make?
Yeah.
I was kind of beating myself up because my cousin Joe was looking at me because I already told him that it was about to go down and I wanted him to keep track of the deer. He saw him run off. He's like, he ran. Joe up until this point was doing amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Like giving me perfect intel. He's like, he ran 300 yards and now I lost sight of him. I don't see him anymore. He went behind this thing. And when he said 300 yards, I'm like, oh my God, I must have made a shitty shot. So I'm thinking to myself, man, this is bad. So I go over to where I shot. I find my arrows. Right there was a pass through. There's quite a bit of blood. I'm like, all right, good. So I walk like 5 yards down the trail and there's a lot more blood. And I'm like, okay, this is promising.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, let me just chill out. Just let me err on the safe side. I sat down. I played on my phone. I didn't have my backpack. I dropped my backpack, so I couldn't drink or eat or anything. But I was like, I'm going to let at least 20 minutes go by. So I'm like, I called my other cousin, called Anthony, who originally was with me. I'm like, Ant, I'm pretty sure I just killed this buck. If you got time, come up. I'm going to let Joe help Charles out, and you come up and help me, and we'll cut this guy up and we'll pack him out. If I, I'm being super optimistic, but in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I did this or not. Even though I saw quite a bit of blood, I just couldn't let myself believe it.
Yeah.
So anyway, 15, 20 minutes passes by, I get up and I start going back on that blood trail again. And the blood's getting worse and worse and worse. Like, not worse, like better and better and better, I should say.
So good for you, bad for deer.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, sweet. Yes. And then I get to this next spot where he must have because Joe had said he stopped for a couple of seconds. He must have stopped there for 10 seconds. And it was just like massacre, blood everywhere, just everywhere. And I'm like, okay. Now at this point, I'm like, I got to find a deer. This deer is dead.
Yeah.
Well, I go another, and it's still in the back of my head. I'm thinking 300 yards though. Like I've only gone 50.
Okay.
60 yards maybe. So I go another 30 yards down the trail and the blood stops 100%. And I'm like, what the freak is going on, man? I'm like, no, this is not happening. I must have missed something. But I could see his tracks and I'm and there's a couple little specks here and there. And I'm looking for the specks. And I'm standing there and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm going to lose this deer. I'm radioing at Joe. I'm like, you sure? Where did you see him go? And da-da-da-da-da. And I'm standing there and I'm talking to him and I look over and the deer's dead in a bush, 10 feet away from me. I had no freaking clue, right? Just piled up in this cactus, all whatever. He just died. He went not even 100 yards, about 100 yards, maybe.
Huh.
And he told me 300 and I was like, that's why I was freaking out.
Did maybe he bump another deer and that deer ran off just because of the chaos? Or
I really don't know. I think Joe was just so excited that it all went down that he just
okay.
lost all. all perspective. And plus, listen, I'll give him this. He was like a mile from where I was.
Okay. Yeah.
So looking into it changed, the perspective changes quite a bit. So anyway, then Anthony showed up, had him meet me, picked up my pack, brought it to me. We took some pictures, processed them, we got him out, and that was the story of Megatron.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. It's there's some highs and lows in that story. I really like it, man. It's I can imagine. I can just feel like your heart drop when he's like, he ran 300 yards, and you're like, no way.
I was like, I can't believe it. Like, that was my worst fear too, because I was like, sometimes I go on autopilot, and I went the majority of my hunting career, my air quotes there, being a very excellent archer and making some pretty amazing shots. But I guess even at that point, I feel like I'm still good, but I am nowhere near the John Stallone of 2017, 2018, and back, maybe even 2019. Since 2020 to now, I haven't practiced the way I used to practice. I used to practice religiously.
Yeah.
I've had injuries, so I don't. I'm not as strong as I used to be. I'm not the archer that I used to be. And in my head, I'm still John Stallone of 2019, right? And, there's almost a cockiness about my thought process. And I feel like you got to kind of be that way. You got to believe in yourself. You got to have the confidence, or you can't make things happen.
Yeah.
But I get this, like, John Stallone is the greatest archer of all time, like, mentality, which I know is not true. I didn't think it then. I don't think it now.
If you don't think you're going to hit a shot at 20 yards, you're going to miss the shot. Like, you have to believe that you're going to do what you're going to try and do.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you got no chance.
When your arrow leaves your bow or your bullet leaves your gun, you can't hope that it's going to hit what you're aiming at. You have to know that it's going to hit.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been doing a lot more hoping than I have been knowing lately in the last several years. So that was in the back, like, in the moment, I am John Stallone's the greatest archer in the whole wide world, but I know that my skill level is not where it used to be.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of it has to do with my eyesight too. Like, I don't have the same acuity that I had. Like, I used to aim at like a tic tac, and I can aim at it and I can hit it. And now I don't think I can even see that tic tac. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
got to get a different color tic tac, John.
Exactly.
I believe in you, man. I believe in you.
A different color and a much larger one.
Yeah.
But,
right.
So, I was just the amount of doubt that I had after making that shot was pretty intense, because I was really fearful that I just screwed up.
Yeah.
And possibly mortally wounded a buck of a lifetime, in my opinion. But
yeah, I understand that. I understand that entirely. I shot a moose this year, and in the moment, I was like, game over. Yes, I am the best. And then, she ran off, and I thought I saw her pile up, but it was like very last light. So it got dark quick. My rangefinder, I couldn't range where I thought she laid down. And your gut just falls. You're like, oh, did I get a good shot? She was quartering towards, like, I just don't know. Conveniently found the arrow, lighted knock, quartering to, full pass through, blood on everything, ended up nicking her heart, and she died almost immediately. But we came back the next day just because, like, there's no blood at all, which is crazy to me. I think it's just, the exit wound, because she was quartering to, right? I'm going to take the shot because I had hunted hard, but it pulled out just a little bit of the guts on the backside, so there was no exit hole. Okay. And I think that's kind of why we didn't find any blood. So. Sure. But either way, I know the feeling. It's tough. You feel so good in the moment, and then you just, unless they pile up in front of you, it's tough. It's easy to doubt. So Well, thanks for sharing, man, because I think that's a very relatable story, minus the fact that it's such an awesome buck, because not everyone gets to kill amazing bucks. But the rest of it's very relatable, man. So cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I know I've taken you for more time than I asked for, so I want to say thank you for that, John. But why don't you wrap things up? Let the people know where they can find you. What other information you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you want to follow me in any capacity, it's just John Stallone on Instagram. Usually is my kind of where I do most of my social communicating. Instagram and YouTube. I'm never on Facebook, even though I have a Facebook. So don't look me up there. I very, 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 very rarely ever post there. But Howl for Wildlife, it's Howl_org, or excuse me, Howl_org on Instagram. That's where we do most of our communication stuff with actions we're doing, what stuff we're being involved in, and just go to howlforwildlife.org and join.
Yeah,
check it out. Look what's going on. We partnered. This is a cool deal. I should probably explain this to you and your listeners. We partnered with the Elk Bros and Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Those guys are awesome.
You're familiar with them?
Yep.
Yeah, they're super great guys, and they understand what's going on, which is fantastic. So we partnered with them. We have a Elk Brothers membership, and it's $299 for the year. You get the Howl for Wildlife membership. You get the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy, which is like their online course. It's like the most comprehensive elk hunting course that I've ever seen online.
It's awesome. Also, just to talk to the course a little bit, because I know Joe, he comes from kind of an education coach background, which gives him a very good perspective on teaching people versus a lot of people that put those things together come from, I'm an elk hunter, let me try and share my skills. He's like, I'm an elk hunter and I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, let me get you where you need to be. And it's a great program. Yeah.
I went through a lot of that growing up. Like, I read books and I would read books, and the books were like, if you want to kill big deer, you got to go where big deer are. And I'm like,
yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah. Where are the big deer? How do I find the big deer? Okay. But so, yeah, they have that. We have the course. We have the Adventure Club, which is like a discount club to purchase gear and so on and so forth. Most people could actually recoup their membership just in the savings that they would get through that. It's like 20 to 50% off or something.
Okay.
Onyx gives you a Onyx Elite gift card. So even if you have Onyx, you can add the gift card to it, and you'll add a year of time to whatever you got. And that's $100. Then you get the Howl membership, which is a $30 deal. And there's some other stuff. It's like $460 worth of baked-in value into that $299 membership. But the cool thing about it, this is the super cool thing about it. I didn't care about any of the other stuff. You have a 1 in 100 chance to win a coached elk hunt with the Elk Bros in New Mexico.
That's awesome.
So every 100 people that join, we're going to draw one hunter to go on an elk hunt. It's archery, muzzleloader, rifle, but it's all bull elk hunts, all on private land, and we cap that off at 2,000 members. So if you're one of the first 2,000, you have a 1 in 100 chance of winning this. It's like a, I don't know, $13,000-$14,000 hunt.
Yeah.
And
those boys know what they're doing. I think Joe is 28 elk he's killed in 27 years or something like that. They're awesome.
Yeah. For me, it's like, I don't know. I just put out 200. I'm going to lose $200 and I think $15 in Wyoming just for applying.
Yeah, well, that's a good
and
point.
I don't, it's better odds. And, I mean, not that $300 is a drop in the bucket for anybody, but it's like, hey, this is the game we play, right? So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like you would have better draw odds than some of the peak units in Wyoming and other places by doing this.
Well, you got to bet, better than here in Arizona, that's for sure.
Right. So okay. Well, cool. Anything else you want to share, John? Otherwise, we'll wrap this thing up, brother.
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate you.
Buddy. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for bearing with my scheduling and my technology. I owe it to you, buddy. And hopefully we'll have you back on because I'm sure you'll think of some more stories as soon as we wrap this thing up.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. See you, bud.
Bye.
All right, guys. That's it. Another couple stories in the books. Again, I want to thank John for coming on the podcast. We had some technical issues with scheduling, but we got it done. Thank you again, sir, for coming on, sharing your stories, and of course, what you're doing within the hunting industry itself. You know, guys, really, howl.org. Check it out. Links are in the show notes. Join up. If nothing else, check in regularly to see what's going around the nation and how people are trying to take hunting away from all of us. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Please share the podcast with, 5 other people, 1 other people. I don't care. Share it with somebody. Whatever you're listening to, give us a review, give us a 5-star rating. And guys, now get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.